Punk revolution now. It's time to review Swans, and I feel like Swans are an appropriate time to whip out the fedora. I am actually a big fan of Swans. I'm not gonna troll, I'm not gonna pull your leg. Noisy industrial stuff all the way to their post-rock, artsy, folky stuff. They've done everything, and it's so cool to see a band releasing experimental, creative, artsy, awesome rock music like this for so long, and so late into their career, they're still pumping out some delicious epic music. I love their release. Came out in 2019, Leaving Meaning. I thought that was such a beautiful pivot in their discography because, you know, throughout the 2010s, they were releasing this explosive, climactic, sometimes even abrasive post-rock, and then Leaving Meaning, which is their previous album, it was just, you know, more beautiful, more droney, more, you know, just kind of lush and sensual and sensitive. I thought that was such a beautiful pivot. Reminded me of some of their, you know, 80s, 90s output that was a little bit more country, neo-folk, singer-songwriter, their side project Angels of Light. Super cool for a long-time Swan fan such as myself to see them take that, turn that page. So, you know, I'm always excited what the heck is Swan's gonna do now, because they're always doing such crazy things. They always release long albums doing very epic stuff, and they're turning the page to The Beggar, the new album. What are they gonna do? Are they gonna do more stuff like Leaving Meaning? Are they gonna do something like their other thingies? We don't know. Let's just start by taking a look at the album cover. This right here is just a classic Swans album cover, fairly minimal, you know, just have one color in the background and one simple thing in the center. It's a heart. It's a little sketch of a heart. Minimal cover, going along with a 2-hour-long album. You already know we're about to get into Swans. I really don't have much to say, folks. It's a heart. I'm not gonna be overanalyzing it. We can talk about how the heart means things and love, but whatever. So let's just get into the music, shall we? First and foremost, it is in fact the case that this album is continuing to build and develop on some of the direction that they have entered with their 2019 album, Leaving Meaning. This album is gonna be really focused on droniness and beauty. It kind of feels like a sunny, kind of like sunrise that's like a little bit more soaking in the lush atmosphere in contrast to their you know, like To Be Kind, which had more like you know, abrasive, no-wave influences coming into the explosive, loud post-rock. Even though it's getting a little bit more melodic, a little bit more lush, there's absolutely no doubt that this is classic experimental Swans, definitely seeing a lot of parallels with their classic 90s masterpiece, Soundtracks for the Blind, just given that it's a long album that kind of has a little bit of everything. Yes, it's very beautiful at times, but just like Soundtracks for the Blind, and just like honestly the entirety of Swans' discography, even when it gets super beautiful, you can't help but feel there's a little bit of tension, a little creepiness kind of bubbling underneath it. I kind of feel like Swans has entered an era where Michael Gira, the frontman of Swans, has just gone through so much mental illness and insanity throughout his life and so much angst that you can obviously see throughout his music. It kind of feels like at this point with Leaving Meaning and now with The Beggar, his brain is just so fried from all that hatred that all that is left is he just is kind of like reverting back to his like 90s Angel of Light, kind of almost gothic country sort of thing going on here. Really beautiful, a lot more droney. If you're someone who wants post-rock to get super epic and explosive and, you know, gradually build into, you know, a giant climax, you know, this might not be honestly the album for you. Just like Leaving Meaning, this album, you know, has a lot of that sunny, psychedelic, beautiful post-rock that's more focused on weaving together a lot of instruments, a wide range of instrumentation into a wall of sound. I think the song Michael Is Done is a great example of that. That is a song with a ton of really cool instrumentation. Kind of reminds me of Phil Spector, given that it's just like everything is so filled up with the bass playing this beautiful, gorgeous major key bass line, lots of like synths and guitars just angelic filling up the space, a wall of sound, and then even the percussion, which has this like like this kind of like reverby, reminds me a hell of a lot of like 60s Phil Spector wall of sound production. Super cool and super beautiful. It's something you wouldn't expect from Swans, but also makes perfect sense from Swans, because this is literally just a giant wall of gorgeous beauty just pushing at you for like several minutes, and then finally at one point, classic Swan style, the chord progression, the chord, just one chord just changes to another chord, and it's a gorgeous, like it feels like just such a nice relief. And then it, you know, changes the chord again. It's very subtle. You know, this is not like boom, boom. You know, it's not like the aggressive noise rock influenced Swans. This is more meditative, mature Swans, and you definitely feel that from Michael Gira in his vocal performances. He's like, he's kind of like. He's kind of an old man now, for being honest. So if you like Leaving Meaning, I think you're gonna like this as well. But I'm gonna say, honestly, this album to me feels a little bit more, I guess you could say, ambitious. While Leaving Meaning, I feel like it did a great job of tying together earlier elements of Swan's discography with this kind of post-rock thing. They're continuing to do that here, but I feel like the melodies in The Beggar are just even more melodic. They even have a song, Los Angeles City of Death, which is honestly, I think it's just like 3.5 minutes long. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they've got a song that's like 44 minutes long, which is really the highlight of the whole album. That really goes to show you their freaking ambition. Like I said, The Beggar, a lot of the individual tracks throughout this album, they might be 8, 9, 10, 11 minutes long, 3.5 minutes long. And in those kind of post-rock compositions, that individual post-rock composition might not have a climax within it. It might be more droney and beautiful and kind of transcendental rather than like an individual climax, although some songs have climax. I would say don't think so much about each individual song as a post-rock song as a climax. Think of each individual song as being a beautiful experience that leads to the 44-minute track that like is in itself the climax of the album. Like you've worked your way through this 2-hour-long album to the 44-minute song track that is in itself like it's like almost like you can kind of feel throughout this album Michael Gira's just kind of brooding in all this angst, but also like kind of just reflecting on life. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful acoustic guitar, gorgeous synths, gorgeous, and then his brain is just slowly melting. You get those some kind of creepy guitars in the background of each song, and then you get to the 44-minute track, and this is where we go full avant weirdo. We're talking like, I think the one comparison that comes to mind for this track is Faust's debut album, because that album is one of my favorites. It combines like weird sound collages with this sort of existential, mind-melting, depressive, nihilistic, honestly a ton of musical talent. It's ultimately progressive rock with the sheer amount of talent. Like the way that Faust's debut album just kind of like goes from one thing to the other. The song is very progressive. It's always changing and shifting. It feels like an otherworldly experience. Well, I'd say Swans in The Beggar Lover 3 are doing pretty much the same thing here, except it's a full 44-minute song, and it honestly flashes by in a minute. I'm so surprised. It doesn't, I was thinking, oh my god, this is like a whole album within an album, a 44-minute song within a 2-hour album. I'm like, that's gonna be, it's honestly, it really does, it's not like it has one riff that it repeats for one, you know, over and over again for 44 minutes. But it's also not necessarily like it's combining a bunch of songs together into one thing. It kind of just feels like it's one cohesive journey that just kind of gradually... It's so beautiful. It's so weird. I think this is actually, you know, I keep going back to the word psychedelic. Swans has never been a band I've really thought of as psychedelic. I've always thought of them as the opposite of psychedelic, honestly. Of psychedelic music is supposed to be music that you listen to help you enjoy your psychedelic drug experience. I think the last thing you're gonna want to put on is anything from Swans from, you know, 80s to 90s. But I honestly feel like with this album, you put it on, maybe some of the moments are gonna be freaky and creepy just because like there's this underlying creepiness. But I think honestly there's enough psychedelic elements here that you're gonna have a pretty trippy, cool experience. I love all these kind of like vocal chants that come in. I think throughout this album I even hear like a little baby kind of making some noises. Like it's just like whoa, 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 whoa. It's like Rick and Morty, the whole universe is collapsing while Swans is taking you through that journey. And that's a beautiful, beautiful experience, especially like I said, you've worked your way through this long album and you get to it and it feels really damn good. I really, 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 really enjoy this album. I think a lot of people are gonna straight up think of this as like Leaving Meaning, their previous album, but maybe more refined and more ambitious and therefore better. I think a lot of people are gonna think of it that way. To me, honestly, this album actually is a little bit the opposite, where it feels like a middle ground between their like To Be Kind post-rock stuff and their more gorgeous, beautiful, droney, atmospheric Leaving Meaning. It feels like they wanted to find a good middle ground between the beauty of Leaving Meaning and the ambition of To Be Kind, and that is exactly what The Beggar is. And I honestly love Leaving Meaning. I don't want people to think of The Beggar as just a straight upgrade to Leaving Meaning, although I think a lot of people are going to think of that. Personally, for me, I feel like a lot of these songs are, I mean, every song is really beautiful. I don't always love the melodies. You know, this, like I said, this album is trying to go in a more melodic direction. Not every melody is hitting so well, like No More of This. It's a very melodic, vocal-driven song. I feel like the melody in itself is so-so, and then Michael's vocal delivery is just so, it just gets a little bit, I'm not crazy about it. Maybe it's a little bit pitchy. Maybe it's a little bit just of a personal taste thing. I think I enjoy the listening experience of Leaving Meaning a little bit more. I also feel like the very last track on The Beggar, The Memorious, is, you know, again, kind of what you've been hearing throughout the album, but like a little bit more so-so, just kind of droning on one kind of note. That's, it's cool, but you know, it's after finishing a 44-minute song that followed like a whole however freaking long this album is. It's like, I don't really know if we needed that. It doesn't really necessarily feel like a really awesome boom, you know, hitting that conclusion button after a 44-minute song. So I don't think it's a flawless album, but I sure as hell think that it demonstrates that Swans is, I mean, they are a freaking outstanding band. They're doing everything and anything, and they are nailing it. I am really, really happy. I found this album just such an enjoyable, gorgeous listening experience. The instrumentation is just so gorgeous, so well thought out. Every detail just completely filling your headphones with like a wall of gorgeousness that it's like beautiful, but you feel a little uneasy inside at the same time. It's just, how do they do that? It's so cool. It's otherworldly. So I'm giving this a 9.1 out of 10. Awesome job, Swans. Another freaking phenomenal album in the discography. No surprise there. I'm always gonna be, honestly, a gigantic fan of their 90s and 80s stuff. I feel like that's just you know, that's the Swans I grew up listening, and I'm always gonna love them for that, but I am super impressed that they are continuing to just crush it, even after returning from their hiatus. Awesome job, Swans. 9.1. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Punk Revolution now.